So Barstool Sports is off to a very fiery start to 2022 with Rico Bosco, in quotations, going postal on a fellow Barstool personality, followed by his suspension by El Prez Dave Portnoy, who we will talk about a little bit more later. But we will not only dive into what happened in this incident, but also the lead up and the fallout from it so far. But first, we need to set the scene by introducing the main character in the storyline, Rico Bosco. So, who is Rico Bosco? I will explain the air quotes around his name shortly as we dive into the incident leading to the suspension, but Rico used to be a faceless talent at Barstool Sports in the gambling realm, where before that he was a frequent caller to radio shows in the sports world. Fast forward to 2020, Rico is now showing his face in content, but still is not a full-time employee of Barstool. And then not too long after, in 2021, he officially became a full-time employee. Now it appears, even though he went full-time, his office habits did not change much after getting the contract. If the banter on the shows with him, Dave Portnoy, and Big Cat are any indication, even though his other commitments by going full-time, which were used as excuses before, were now seemingly gone, which according to what I've seen stated on certain things and certain content out there, he was, I guess, a firefighter with kind of an irregular schedule because they do days on, days off, and they only have time off every so often. And apparently he got hurt on the job or whatnot, and that made it hard for him to stay there. But you would think landing a job like this to relieve pressure would be something one would not want to mess up. But it appears Rico went full-time just this past fall of 2021 after many years of waiting, and it has only gone downhill since. Now, prior to the full-time negotiation on the Barstool Pick'em podcast, Rico got into a screaming match with Dave Portnoy, the president and founder of Barstool Sports. And in that, it slipped out that Dave had kind of helped him out regarding his home life, which we as viewers only found out in the comment section because they only bleeped out the part. They didn't blur the mouths. So some gifted lip reading folk in the comment section were able to kind of translate what was said in that. And so we all kind of figured it out. But I personally don't think it was anything big that didn't need to be said. But clearly Rico has a pattern of being nervous about his real self coming out. But before we move on to the supporting cast of the Rico, aka Miko Bosco show, later I will link you to my past comments on Barstool Sports if you're interested, but stay tuned till the end for that. So now to the brief background of Dave Portnoy, El Prez, founder of Barstool, and Big Cat Dan Katz, who you see pictured in the middle here, who is one of the original Barstool Sports employees. Their interactions with Rico. We touched on it a little bit, that might give you a little indication, but to be more specific, their interactions have always been kind of ball busting, poking, instigating type relationship. And that's just kind of the culture in general at Barstool Sports. And they do it because they're a comedy entertainment media company. So they do all that for the sake of good, entertaining content, because their office is basically a reality TV version of the show The Office, with a little bit of a WWE storyline drama flair to it. But some could say Dave and Dan have created this culture that enabled Rico to do what he did, which we're going to get to in a second, because they view content as king, indicating content may be more important than even workplace safety if you're just looking at this one incident and a few in the past. But now it looks like this situation may have finally made it more clear where the line is drawn. Now, usually, it's just high school, relatively harmless drama, nothing too serious, usually just sticks to words and doesn't get too personal most of the time. But in this case, throwing a full can of high noon hard seltzer at your coworker is on another level. Of course, it could cause serious damage. You may be wondering what could cause someone to want to chuck a full can of anything at their colleague first thing in the morning. And we're going to get into that right now. But we need to do one more thing. One more thing before we do that. And we need to define or explain why I even put quotations around Rico Bosco, the name. That's because that's not Rico's real name. Long story short, his government name is the thing that apparently keeps triggering him, apparently it's supposed to be this really well-kept secret, but it clearly is not. And Big T, the other main character in this episode, the guy who Rico threw the can at, apparently knows this is the trigger and uses it to his full advantage in following in the footsteps of Dave and Dan as setting the example of poking the bear for good content. Now, this aspect of the whole situation shows that it wasn't just an all of a sudden Rico snapped moment. There was a buildup, picking up steam, starting with a live stream in November at the Barstool Sportsbook New Jersey gambling house on a college football Saturday, where Big T was sitting on the row behind Dave, as you see here. And Rico was pictured here. He was sitting in between Casey Smith and Dave Portnoy with some extra room. And you see here Dave kind of prompting or patting the seat saying, "Hey, Big T, come down and sit with us," coupled with Big T asking, "Is Rico okay with this?" But instead of saying Rico, he said the nickname for Rico's real name, which also happens to start with a T. And he said it in a very soft, unemotional, kind of flippant delivery. Nothing too harmful or kind of violent, if you will, which I'm sure made Rico a little bit more mad. Followed quickly by Rico doing what Rico does best, and that is self-destructing, turning into the mindset of the whole world is against me. As he storms out, he picks up the microphone that was on the ground and kind of flinches towards them and kind of threatens to basically hit them with the microphone. And at this point, no one seems too threatened, and it's just kind of chalking this up to Rico being Rico. But later that week, Big T is on another stream with Dave. Apparently, Dave is getting texts from Rico talking crap about Big T, followed by a phone call on stream where Rico loses his cool again, with Big T kind of egging him on in the background. And more Rico just being Rico, all bark, no bite at this point still. But then we fast forward to the new year. It is 2022. It is the college football national championship game, streamed on a Monday night in January 10th to be exact. And things are going okay, but Rico is still being himself and is universally panned for his comment about a guy twisting his knee after landing weird, to him wearing shorts, and everyone kind of just looked at him on stream like, "No, are you joking? Did you really just say that?" And of course, Rico says, "Oh great, everyone is against me now, yada yada yada." But then he's later still sitting behind everybody in the corner by himself. But then Casey Smith is in front of him, as you see here. And Rico is then getting mad because another guy he doesn't like tweeted out that he was going to show up to the house. And this prompts Rico to just lose it and slam a plastic water bottle against the wall next to him, going, and this is where things start getting a little dark, because not only is Casey in this picture actually appearing to be concerned, sitting in front of this guy who clearly just snapped and can snap at any moment again, and has already resulted to physical means with the water bottle. But everyone was kind of like, what the heck? As you see here, I got this screenshot. Everyone's looking over like, what the heck? And this followed with Big Cat going over to sit next to him, trying to kind of calm him down, and is subtly joking at him, indicating he needs to get some help, some mental health help. And it's trying, with Dan, it's hard sometimes, Big Cat, to tell if he's being serious or joking, because he gets this tone with certain people in the office who kind of go off the handle of this like dad talking to his toddler and trying to calm his toddler down. And In this case, though, I think he was taking that tone to make it less harsh, but also trying to diffuse the situation and actually trying to help Rico in a way that would get through to him. But then apparently it didn't work because the next morning of January 11th, it was a Tuesday, a day that will go down in Barstool history and maybe even sports media history. I don't know. But before too many were in the office, Big T was at his desk. Rico was just a few rows away at his desk, closer to Big Cat, where it appears Rico, after being greeted by Big Cat over the game the night before, which we just saw the stuff from the stream, loud enough for Big T to hear, but not to his face, said something to the effect of, I guess I'm just some low-level employee. All I need to do is bang the keyboard and wear orange and cheer for teams in the South, which was clearly a dig at Big T because one, Big T's nickname is Big Tennessee. He is known for wearing orange, and that's where his roots are in his college team that he roots for and wears the colors, and that's his nickname. And this picture I see here is kind of the view I would think would be Big T's view. So then, apparently Big T heard this, took his earbud out and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong, T?" Basically using Rico's real name. And that is what set Rico off, apparently, to grab the nearest unopened High Noon hard seltzer black cherry or blackberry flavor and rocket it towards Big T, barely missing his head, as seen in the surveillance footage released shortly after, which it's linked in or it's pretty much shown in every video I link below as sources to this episode. And in the surveillance footage, you see the stack of clothes behind Big T with the dent that goes through it and kind of it move when the can hits them, absorbing all that energy from the can by Rico that had just grazed Big T's shoulder after he moved his head to the side, dodging the can. Now, Big T is then seen showing the dented can that was thrown at him to the camera of one of the other guys that was in the office, like filming after the throw happened. But it didn't end there. When Big T reacted as any normal person would, of asking, What are you kidding me? Are you crazy? Rico then grabs another can and is now booking it towards Big T at his desk, getting right in his face, threatening to hurt him again, saying, "This one's going right through your head this time," and then violently throws it down in the trash can next to Big T, and then starts banging on the desk as Big Cat is quickly rushing over to step in to take Rico away before he actually touches Big T and gets him really big, makes it even worse, and is having to play what people are calling Dad Cat by telling everyone to just chill out because it was getting heated and everyone was talking and trying to make it worse, and he just had to tell everyone to just shut up for a little bit. But apparently, as Rico was heading out the door, because he basically got sent home to cool off for the day, and then we'll get into the suspension in a second, I guess they sort of interacted, him and Big T, but it wasn't really an apology because I guess Rico coupled the whole thing with, well, if you'd stop being a dick, this wouldn't happen, which doesn't work when you're the one who started the fight and started being physical with the other guy. So word quickly worked its way up to management and up the chain to Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports president and founder, who immediately texted Rico, suspending him for 30 days with an anger management requirement, which was agreed to by Rico. Now let's get into the fallout from this, the notable comments on Barstool shows for the rest of the week, mostly that day and the day after. Starting with the Yak on January 11th, which was the afternoon after this had happened. Big Cat, seen here, said he thinks it will be better for Rico overall now that he is suspended in order to anger management and some therapy. And it is good that this breaking point came without someone getting seriously injured, even though it appears that was the intent behind throwing the can. Now, Big Cat then thinks that the Dave Portnoy show, which we'll reference in a second, that was filmed a few days before, right before, I think the day before the national championship stream, but wasn't released yet at this point. It was supposed to go out later that day or even the next day, was kind of hanging over Rico's head because of Dave's comments on that show of some of the content that Rico is in. And we're going to get to that right now, because on the Dave Portnoy show from a few weeks ago, they appeared to have filmed this segment, which is called Inside Barstool, where Dave kind of just goes through some updates in the business of Barstool Sports. And they had filmed this before the incident happened, where Dave is basically shitting on the Barstool Bench Mob podcast, which is like an ensemble crew podcast of college basketball that Rico is one of the co-hosts of. And basically he was referencing the crew's trip to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which I guess Dave thought it was a bad look for the company because they were tweeting out, begging for free tickets and food and whatnot and free tours and whatnot. And I guess Rico got word of this and took this as kind of the beginning of the end of his time at Barstool, because he feels like he can't do anything right and whatnot. But Dave basically called that podcast a JV podcast, not a varsity one. And then the episode was supposed to end, and they ended up adding a tag onto the end of the video after the Rico suspension via Zoom, where Dave said he thinks that actually Big T has likely a reason to sue the company. So he's on Big T's side. He's like, I'm doing whatever I need to do to make Big T happy so he doesn't freaking sue us. Where Dave then confirms that Rico actually agreed to the terms of getting help, and this agreement was actually reached with Dave before Dave even knew about the actual can throwing. He only had seen the video of Rico screaming at Big T in his face and throwing the can in the trash and banging his hand on the table. And so the surveillance footage came out after, and Dave got aware of that, the throw of the can after he had already suspended Rico. So clearly Rico was already on his last leg and already in big trouble with them. But this is, we also get confirmation from Eddie, the co-host you see here, that Rico had actually did quit his pension job. So we're thinking that it is confirmed that he was a firefighter or whatnot, to go full time. And now he's in a pickle because he's basically on his way out the door. So it's probably pretty stressful for Rico at this point. And now on the enabling front regarding Dave and Dan and everybody who kind of sets the culture for Barstool, Dave said he knew Rico was crazy, but he didn't think he would get to this point. But he says, everyone says, I run an insane asylum at Barstool. So, and Dave tends to hyperbolize, but maybe this is kind of proof he's not exaggerating. And he does kind of brush off a little bit the enabling claims, but he still kind of explores the idea and kind of doesn't want to fully admit that maybe they are enabling this type of behavior. But at least Dave, in this tag of his show, was honest about thinking in the back of his mind as this was playing out how great of content this was. And it goes back to my comments earlier about how content is king, and also shows that and confirms that what I like about Dave and the company, which is they're honest and they're transparent, even to a fault. And so Dave also points out, well, apparently the fault is attempted murder is kind of the line. But Dave then says, if you can't handle the ball busting environment that we have, then this isn't the place for you. If you can't handle it, or it brings you to the point where you want to kill someone, literally, probably not the place for you. Dave then commented about how Big T basically probably, as the can was going past his shoulder, was thinking, I'm about to sign a lifetime contract with this company. But then we got an update this week on the Dave Portnoy show where Dave basically says it's been over a week and he still hasn't arranged any anger management for Rico. He says maybe Rico's found one himself. He's hoping that's true, but it doesn't look like they're in any hurry to get Rico back with the company, so, or anytime soon. So we will see how this unfolds in the next few weeks, if or when Rico returns and in what fashion, because he's supposed to return right before Super Bowl, and then not soon after that's March Madness, and those are two big gambling things that he would need to be involved in. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be following this, and we're going to keep going. But the last note on the fallout of these shows is now that it has kind of become a running joke in the office, from what I've seen, of kind of like if someone's messing with you, be like, I'm gonna throw this high noon can at you, which we'll explore high noon in a second. So I'm gonna go into my thoughts on 5 different categories in general. One being Big T, thoughts on Rico, high noon itself, Barstool in general regarding the situation, and then some of my personal kind of what I would do in the situation type of thinking. So first, on the Big T front, Big T seems to be a good sport overall, just in general, even regarding the situation, considering he actually landed his full-time gig with Barstool after being an intern and having like one of the worst gambling days of his life in front of Dave Portnoy live on stream next to him. And also considering the behavior of Rico, Big T still didn't back down or let Rico squeeze him out, as Rico has done to so many people, and he has so many people that don't like him. However, I do think Big T calling Rico by his legal government name when it is not out there publicly is asking for trouble, and I think it can be considered crossing a line. Although I think anyone in today's day and age would be foolish to think you can be anonymous while still trying to be a public figure and decide to show your face. I just think you have to kind of expect that your real information, some of your information, at least your name, is going to be out there because of how many people you interact with, and it's just part of the thing. So anyways, regarding Big T and the content is king, Big T was trending after this on Twitter, although Big T himself and some at Barstool were kind of pointing out how Donald Trump has been referred to as Big T on Twitter, so it could be both contributing to the trending of the phrase. But anyways, Dave mentioned on his show, we just talked about this, how Big T basically has the power over Barstool at this point regarding his employment, because he could sue them or do something legal or turn on them any second. And not saying that Big T should threaten or blackmail them, but I did think about this right away too when I saw the situation come up, because they're wanting to keep him happy right now, to minimize any damage to the company, or at least give T the opportunity to basically do whatever he wants, or make him as big of a personality as they can. And I did think in the back of my mind, maybe Big T was kind of pushing things on purpose with Rico because he knew it would spark a reaction that could help him secure a job long term. I don't know. Could be possible, but I'm not in Big T's head. But from a Rico standpoint, if you already think everyone is against you, as Rico does, one way to get people to not like you more and get people to like the guy you hate even more is going off the handle as he did, as the guy you hate is being calm and rational in his response. What is shocking about Rico in general is that he bucks the trend that most people follow of playing an exaggerated version of themselves online, especially at Barstool Sports, by doing the opposite. At this point, it seems like Rico is actually downplaying on camera who he really is offline or off camera, which is really the scariest part, which is why I think him getting help is the right thing to do, not only for his sake in the company, but for those in his private life who deal with Rico at home, because clearly there is some deep-seated stuff he needs to figure out, and all this is kind of the manifestation of something going on we don't know about. And that is kind of that is the dark, sad part about this, as entertaining as it is to watch at times. But I will say, in Rico's defense, strictly speaking, from an entertainment standpoint, the first streams back during Wild Card weekend for NFL without Rico were not as entertaining. Sure, they were less volatile, less abusive, less violent, less toxic, less emotionally draining, but they weren't as entertaining. And so there is this spectrum to Rico Bosco content entertainment-wise. For instance, I didn't mind watching Rico Bosco's contract negotiations this season on Barstool Pick'em, or his Dave Portnoy show interview screaming match about his office habits, because those are subjects that are fascinating to me regardless of who is involved in it at Barstool, because Barstool is known for being open to talking about those things on air. Even though, as we already talked about on the Dave Portnoy show stuff, it was all bleeped out and whatnot, and the contract negotiations were vague and they didn't get into too many specifics, but it was still good content and still interesting. But that is the trade-off with Barstool, is airing things out for everyone to see is as entertaining, but you also and get the clicks, but also you have to deal with the fallout from that. And the fallout for Rico is diminishing returns with being able to do a good job and getting along with the coworkers needed to get the job done. If Rico can't get along with people, I think maybe Rico should take his name and likeness, assuming he didn't sign it over to Barstool or Penn, the parent company, to start his own thing. If it ends up that he doesn't work out with Barstool, he never comes back. But we will have to see what happens when the suspension is over in time for March Madness, like I said, and Super Bowl. But judging from this week's Dave Portnoy show, he may be out for longer than 30 days. Now, last observations on Rico's response to this is, one, the Barstool comment sections on this situation from YouTube to Reddit are priceless and golden. And two, normally with Rico, he has his quote-unquote writers defending him, but I haven't seen too much of that in this case. And the comment I left under the Dave Portnoy show episode covering this had one person reply saying they have revoked their writership after seeing the light in this situation with who Rico really is. Now, as far as the actual High Noon hard seltzer can and the brand itself, I'm still not sure if High Noon, the can throw, is good for the High Noon brand or bad, because I see it as good for eyeballs on it, just from an awareness and impressions for the brand standpoint, but also for the can surviving the throw, which has been mentioned by many Barstool personalities and fans. But also it's bad because High Noon will now be linked forever to this physically violent situation in a sector, alcohol and whatnot, which is similar to gambling, where they emphasize responsible consumption and responsible behavior. And we can probably easily argue that throwing a full can of a beverage at a coworker is not the responsible thing to do. Either way, every show this is being talked about on has been mentioning High Noon, even if it isn't their sponsor of that show that day. And here we are right now, basically giving it a free ad. But my question is then, does this set a bad precedent for free advertisement wrapped in controversy, or at least further perpetuate the all publicity is good publicity mindset? Last point on the High Noon specific topic, I do admit this situation did make me almost want to go out and buy a High Noon. Just saying. So now let's get to some general comments about this for the Barstool Sports brand in general, which is, I think Big Cat and Dave are going to have to continue to deal with the comments blaming them for enabling this behavior, not only from Rico, but from everyone, because they created this culture. And like I said, it is entertaining, but it appears that this is the line where that is not worth the trade-off anymore. And at some point, the risk far outweighs the reward in terms of Rico. And if you condone throwing something at coworkers, this risks bringing down the entire ship and the entire company, because people won't want to show up to work or they'll quit. And then people won't want to apply and try to work for Barstool, which would be a huge change if I'm understanding correctly, where Barstool seems to be like a place where there's more people who want to work there than there are positions available at the moment. And I know we've been focusing on Rico, but I think it would be unfair to me to not point out the others at Barstool Sports who have shown signs of snapping like this at times. One being Dave Portnoy himself. We got Smitty, we got Frank the Tank, we got Ryan Whitney, we got Jake Marsh, we've got Brandon Walker, we've got Nate, and we've got Jersey Jerry. These are just the ones that are employed now with Barstool, not the ones of the past who have had their own issues and not at the company anymore. So the last point on Barstool in general, and this is just a theory, but the timing of this is a little suspicious, because this is on the heels of the Penn stock tanking, the post-Arizona Bowl cancellation, some technical difficulties at their Rough and Rowdy pay-per-view event, and so there's nothing like a good drama with Barstool's head drama king, queen, Rico Bosco for publicity and for content coming off of the college football championship week leading up to Super Bowl and March Madness, which is the biggest time of year for gambling. But we could also say the reason this happened now, naturally, was because of the pressure of those biggest time of year and all that, and coming off of all those things. So the jury to me is out on this theory because it appears this was a real thing, and maybe it was coincidentally great timing from a content perspective coming off a really bad string of things happening for the company. But either way, it was a great few weeks of content, I will say, regarding NFL playoff weekends and college football championship and now this. And finally, you've been hanging in there. Finally, some of my personal thoughts of my own, a few before we end here, and you can comment on these as well on this aspect wherever you were able to comment. But I was actually thinking how I would respond in this situation if I were Big T, because I can't really put myself in Rico's shoes because I don't think I would get to that point. But I think I would be advocating for Rico to get help, just like Big Cat did the night of the national championship. And what I saw, I think Big T was kind of on his publicity tour talking about this on Barstool shows. He was kind of saying the same thing, like, he wants him to get help, because clearly there is more to this behavior than just losing bets or coworkers busting his balls or someone he doesn't like showing up to the stream. There seems to be some underlying issues he needs to address that he hasn't for a long time. And also, I am a little brother that suffers from what I call little brother syndrome. So I don't know how I would resist poking the bear that is Rico like Big T did, especially in an environment where the higher-ups or the leaders of content are setting an example, encouraging the poking. I probably wouldn't dox him or say his real name, but I'd probably find a way to poke him, because it is your job to make entertaining content, and poking Rico is an easy button for that, up until now where it's kind of crossed the line. But I still don't think the doxing or saying his real name warrants a physical altercation. Instead, this would have been the good time to practice some effective communication by pulling Big T aside and calmly, seriously, firmly explaining to him why the real name thing is a problem. And I'm sure Big T would understand at that point. But lastly, I wondered kind of what role we as viewers play in watching this content where we kind of incentivize the behavior. Because the one point that came up during Rico's negotiations with his contract is the numbers and the viewership that comes with content he is in, which most numbers come from him losing his mind on camera. So let me know what you think of all of this, wherever you are able to comment. And if you are tuning in from the YouTube segment, make sure to tap or click the screen for my last video on my thoughts on Barstool Sports, and tap or click around the channel for more.